building custom clear taillights for any car for less than $100. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As always, it is appreciated. Now, if you've been subbed to my channel for a while, you might be a little annoyed that this is another clear taillight video. However, this one's going to be a little bit different. And this video is actually more for people new to the channel actually wanting to do this themselves. I still get tons of DMs, tons of questions on how to do this properly, or people that are trying it and struggling. So this video in particular is going to be more of a actual DIY step-by-step how-to video, more than like a normal vlog style let's figure this out type of video that I've done in the past. After coming back from Vegas, I had to rebuild this taillight, and it came out so much better than the first time that we did it. And it had me thinking that me and this guy must just have the sauce and know how to do this properly, because I've seen a bunch of people struggle, including doing 350 taillights, and we knocked it out within roughly 2 hours or so. We hadn't done a clear taillight now for about a year or so, but we got these ones done pretty quickly, so I would just want to show you guys step by step on how to do it. Now, first things first, you're going to want to take the taillight lens off. This is the lens we're going to be rebuilding, so I can't really show you the process of doing that, but I'll give you a rough estimate on this guy. I actually just cut open these 370 taillights a couple hours ago. But to cut them open, you just want to get a Dremel. I bought mine from Harbor Freight, but the wheels are actually pretty important. These I would recommend getting from Walmart. Walmart actually sells this group of Dremel bits right here. They're actually pretty sturdy, and they come with like different ones for plastic, metal, things like that. But these will actually last you quite a while, and you'll be able to cut quite a bit more. I want to say those bits cost about as much as the Dremel might cost you, but again, trust me, it's going to be worth it, especially if you're going to be doing this process with a bunch of different stuff. But some things that you are going to need for this whole process: you're going to need some silicone and a caulking gun. I prefer to use black, but you can also use clear if you want to do clear instead. You're going to need clamps, not these, but you're going to need clamps, specifically vice grips. Again, you can get a pack of like 5 of these at Harbor Freight for like $10. But you're definitely going to need about 5 different clamps. Definitely the biggest thing you're going to need is a heat gun. I also recommend that you get some heat resistant gloves. Ours look beat up because we've used them so much, but these definitely help, because touching the lens and working with the heat gun the way you have to definitely sucks, and these help make the process a lot easier. You're going to need different kinds of spray paint, gloss black if you want your edges to be black, or you can also use the same silver that you use to paint the inside of the taillight. And that's one of the questions I get asked the most, is what paint did I use? And it's literally just this paint Rust-Oleum metallic finish. So you're literally going to take this and then just paint the tails like Jonathan is, but we'll get into that later. Besides heat, the most important thing you're going to need is the acrylic. Now, we go and get ours from Home Depot. You can get it from Lowe's, or I know some people have bought some on Amazon. As far as the dimensions, this is the dimensions and the brand that we use. Actually got this one discounted because it was cracked. Generally, you don't want that if you're building a really big taillight, but you just want to make sure that you get enough acrylic. You can buy these sheets a lot smaller, but this big sheet is literally like $40–50, and you can for sure knock out 2 taillights. On my Q50, I was able to knock out like 4 or 5 lenses, so definitely worth the price. But really, you just want to get some acrylic that's relatively thin and not going to give you too hard of a time. But again, those are the dimensions that we use personally. And the last thing that you need for this process, or the last thing I really recommend you having for this process, is your very own friend, your very own friend. Because although you may be able to do this process by yourself, it is a huge pain in the ass, and I highly, highly recommend using somebody else to help you with this. Now, when taking off the old lens, it's up to you on how careful you actually want to be doing this process, because you're not going to need this lens anymore. For instance, when we did my Q50 ones, I literally took a hammer and just shattered the existing lens and then pulled it apart and then took it out from there. But if you want to be more careful, again, take the Dremel, go ahead and just cut along the edges on the back side. Same thing here on the back side, just cut along the edge and then just peel off the inner taillight, and you can get to the inside of the light. With this guy though, I literally just need to peel off all this old silicone, so that's what I'm going to do. All right, now that this lens is completely separated, I can go ahead and show you guys how to actually build a clear taillight and have it look much better than this. So once the lens is officially off, what you want to do is go ahead and take the inside of the taillight piece out. This is different for all tails. For the 350, it's literally going to be a couple of screws in the back. Take out these plugs, and this whole area is going to pop out. For Morimoto 370 taillights, you're going to have this mess here. And for Q50 taillights, it's different as well. So once you actually start taking apart the taillight, just make sure you take photos to know where everything goes. But just take everything out piece by piece until you're left with just this piece here. Now, once you have that piece out, you can go ahead and paint it if you want to, but I really recommend building the clears first and then painting over it, because as you're heating on the fresh paint, the paint will start to come off and actually stick to the lens. So I recommend building the lens first. Obviously with this one, we don't have to worry about that, but generally build the lens and then go ahead and paint it with the silver spray paint I showed you earlier. Now you can also do this process without taking the lens off and actually build on the existing lens. For us, that's kind of more of a pain that we found, but I do know people that have followed my process and actually found that that is easier and they have less like blemishes throughout. But regardless which one you decide to do, the process I'm about to show you is the same going forward, whether you leave the lens on and build the new lens over it, or you take it off and then build it over just the housing. From here, you go ahead and see how much you're actually going to need and cut it out. So you want to go ahead and cut a decent amount off to the shape of the light, but you also want to leave enough excess, that way the bends can actually spread through the edges and you don't get like a lot of bubbling and buildup in the center. Now, I have had people DMing me about cutting and running into issues about the acrylic cracking. So again, just remember to buy the quality Dremel blades. That's going to help, number one. And number two, take your time. The second you try speeding through it, the acrylic's going to crack. Just take your time, make sure you're doing it right, and you'll be perfectly fine. Once you have the acrylic cut out, you go ahead and put it on top. You put your handy dandy heat gloves on, and then we're actually going to start bending this acrylic. Pretty simple. What you're going to do, you're going to take the heat gun and you're going to start applying heat. So while one of you is applying the heat, the other one is actually going to be holding the edges of the acrylic, pushing it down. So what you want is for the acrylic to naturally take the shape of the tail light. You don't want to force it. You don't want to cause any issues. You also want to be applying even heat. If you put heat too much on one area, what's going to happen is it's going to start to bubble and it's going to be a problem. So I'm going to hold back here on the edge. He's going to be applying pressure to both sides, and we're gradually going to start heating this and bending it the way that we want to. Also, another big deal is you start on the hardest part. This looks much easier, and if you start on the backside where it's flat of the taillight, it's going to be a problem. Start on whatever part of the taillight has the most angle. If you get to a spot where it's bent, at least in a corner area, so you can start focusing on the rest and have an extra set of hands, you go ahead and clamp it using the pair of vice grips. But of course, be super careful when doing this, because if you clamp it down too hard, it's going to crack. So make sure that it's not too tight. You're going to have a serious problem. Now, there are going to be times where to get the acrylic where you want, you need to heat it a lot and hold it down, or one of you hold it down while the other heats it, and the acrylic's going to be hot. It's going to suck to hold, and it's going to be a process, but you got to do it. You just got to hold on to it and wait until the acrylic cools down, because once it cools down, that's when it keeps its shape. So as you're going through this process as well, once you get to a spot where some edges are touching and you're like, hey, a clip right here would be good, go ahead and draw it out. Cut that area off, add another clip to make sure that it doesn't move, and you're continuously keeping your shape throughout. So right now we're about maybe 40 minutes into this heating process. And to recap, we have 1, 2, 3 pieces clamped currently, all with major like endpoints and curves around them. That's not fully touching in this area, but that's okay. You can work and heat on that at the end, but the main shape is there, kind of the same thing a little bit right there. So from here, we're just going to start working on this top side and pushing all this pressure outwards and to the edges. As you're working out this pressure, you're working on putting the acrylic to touch the actual piece of the taillight at the top. And then from there, you'll go ahead and cut it. You don't want to cut any closer than this. Again, even after you're clamping and kind of have the shape, you want to leave enough excess to still do some bends over the edges if you need to, as well as make sure you're doing the proper cuts to make this look like an actual taillight, because if you cut it too short or you cut it too much, it's not going to look right. Also, from time to time, if you have corners like this and you're seeing a lot of tension, it's okay to put a relief cut. Just be careful, if you put the relief cut too far in and you start messing with this, it's possible that this can spread, crack over the lens, and then you have to restart over. But as we moved, we put a couple of clamps here along the edge just to keep that down. Worked our way over here. Now we have a clamp here while this is all drying, cooling, and holding its shape. So we're gonna wait a couple minutes, let this just fully cool up on top, and then we're gonna start working again on these areas just to make sure that it's fully touching, fully grabs the shape. Same thing with all the edges, and at that point, once we bend everything over the way that we need to, we'll pretty much be done with this taillight. And if this is your first video, this acrylic can actually bend quite a bit with enough heat. As you can see, we've completely bent it over the corner. So keep that in mind when doing your edges or certain areas. If your car has a tight corner, it definitely can be bent to make that corner work. You just have to do it the right way and be careful about it. But again, the only problem with this is obviously you have to hold it, and it is hot enough to bend the way that it is, which makes doing so not a fun process. All right, and as far as the shape goes, we're pretty much done. Obviously, we still need to cut all this excess off. What's nice about this too is because it has this like protective film on it, one, you can be a little less careful when actually building these. But two, it makes it nice when you're marking where you want to cut, because if for some reason you cut a little less than that, it's not going to show up on the actual lens. For instance, I can go ahead and draw this rocket ship right here, and it'll be okay because it's not actually on my taillight. It's going to come right off. Okay, so now that this has fully been trimmed and slightly molded to it, what I'm going to do is take off all this extra plastic layer, make it fully clear, and then I'm going to use silicone to seal only specific parts to start. Then after that dries, I'll go ahead and bend some other areas and seal it even further. After you get the silicone in the areas that you want, it is okay to go ahead and re-clamp the lens. Just make sure that you put a cloth over the acrylic just to help, again, make sure that it's safe and not going to crack. So first layer of silicone has been put on along with some clamps just to make sure that it's all good. And if you want, or like pushing for time, you can technically just let that sit for a few hours. I'm probably going to let that sit overnight and then reseal it again tomorrow morning because I'm not in a hurry to do these. So I will just go ahead and leave that. I'll pick this back up tomorrow, add some more sealant around it, and then I'll show you the final step of completing these tail lights and then putting them on the car so you can see what they look like. So it's been like 5 days since I put the silicone on. You don't need to wait that long. Really, just a full day is plenty of time, but I wanted to make sure it fully set in. So on the flat edges, silicone is just pushed down and evened out. And on the edges that were folded over, same thing, you just fill in that space even more so. So now that that's nice and sealed, we're going to move on to our final step. And this here is what you're wanting to do with the painter's tape. So if it didn't make sense earlier, essentially what you're wanting to do is leave the edge exposed and just tape the center. Obviously make sure that all areas that you did tape are down, even if you want to go over that area again with some more tape just to make sure no paint is going to seep through. That would be good. As far as how much you need to leave exposed, it's really up to you and kind of the look that you want to go with. But I am going to go wider on these, one, because I think it looks better, and two, I just really want to make sure that all the blemishes and the silicone under the lens is covered. And again, for the end result, the color you end up using is completely up to you. You can use black like I do for mine. I like the way that that looks personally, but you can use the same silver that you used on the inside of the lens to make it look all like one piece. You can do a different color. If you have blue on your car like I do or something like that, you can obviously paint the edge something else, but generally black and silver are going to be your cleanest looks. So I'm going to go ahead and paint these lenses, and then I'll pick this back up tomorrow after they're completely finished and dry. So they are completely finished and dry as stated, and I have already put them on the car, and here's how they came out. And even though this isn't the taillight I've been showing you guys, we did the same process on this one about a week and a half ago. So as you can tell, fitment is pretty good all along, especially along this edge here. The bumper fitment isn't the greatest, but that's because these taillights are made for a later year than my Z, and they've never sit right even when I first bought them and put them on the car, so it's not really like a lens fitment issue. Because other than that, the edge sits exactly where I want it to be. And I'm just really happy overall with how these ended up coming out. And of course, I also use this same process with my Q50, and I still love how these look. I do need to clean them up because when I repainted the edge, I did it kind of crappy, so I need to fix that. But the fitment and everything on these still looks great as well. And that is the whole process of how you make these clear taillights. Now I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple questions or comments that I've received on other videos or messages that I've gotten about these taillights. Now the first one, do they leak or soak in moisture? Obviously it depends on how well you seal them. The silicone will do a good job of keeping them closed, especially if you're actually bending the lens over the existing housing and then seal it on the back. It's just that extra layer of protection. But as long as you seal it correctly, no, they will not get water in them, they won't get dirt in them, and you won't have like any condensation happening inside the taillight. 2, this isn't really a question, but it's a comment that I've gotten of that looks like crap, or it's better to do it the actual way of building clear taillights. And that's correct. This isn't going to look as clean as if you just buy an actual set of clear tails, take that lens off, and then put it on the housing. It just won't, because regardless, you are heating a piece of acrylic and there's going to be some waves, there's going to be some issues, and it's not going to be a perfect lens no matter how good you are at doing this process. Which begs the question, why do this method at all? Which honestly is pretty simple. There's really only 2 reasons why you would want to go this route instead of the other route of building clear taillights. Number 1, money. It's cheaper to do it this way because you're paying $45 for the piece of acrylic. You don't need to buy an extra set of taillights that you're going to be throwing away, and it's just less expensive overall. And number 2, the reason why I started this whole process to begin with, some cars don't have an aftermarket taillight that also has a clear lens on top, meaning you can't do the actual method of building clears, which for instance on Q50s was leaving people to just break their taillights altogether and not run a lens at all. It's definitely not safe, and it's just kind of a ghetto way to do it. Not that this isn't kind of a getaway in some people's eyes, but at least you have an actual lens on it and you made it from scratch. And that's why I started this process, for those cars that don't have that option to go clear. And the final question that I probably get more than anything else is, can we do this for you guys? Can me and Jonathan just build the clear taillights if you send us the lights? And the answer is yes, we can. However, there are a couple issues that come with us doing them. 1, chances are you don't live where we live, so you are going to have to ship the taillights to us. That means you won't have taillights for your car for however long it takes us to finish them and get them shipped back to you. And the final thing is, as soon as you have us do this, it takes them from being a cheap option to build clear taillights and throws that right out the window, and it's no longer cheap. Because you're gonna have to pay to ship them out here, you're gonna pay for the materials, and then you're gonna have to pay for our labor to do it. And as you've seen, it takes multiple days to get these done. So for it to make sense for me and Jonathan to do them, we have to make sure that we're billing you guys a good enough amount to split between the both of us that is going to justify doing 2 to 5 days worth of work to make these taillights. And that's all the questions I can think of at the moment. But if there is anything that you have that I didn't touch base on here, go ahead and leave it down in the comments below or shoot me a message on Instagram. I love that this video series has been super informational for you guys. So many of you have used it to create clears yourself, or you've asked me questions about it. So hopefully this video helps you guys be better at this whole process, whether you're wanting to do it for yourself as an extra form of income, or you just want to build clears for your own cars. So thank you guys for watching all the previous videos. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully this one helps you accomplish these clear taillights more. And I also hope you guys have hit that subscribe button, you've dropped a like or a comment, and I definitely hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace out.